The City Council Committee on Government Services, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, will meet in person on Thursday, January 15th, 2026 at 6:00 p.m. for the purpose of discussing that the City Solicitor prepare a home rule petition requesting authorization of the Massachusetts Legislature to amend the City Charter to provide for ranked choice voting, RCV, in local elections. This meeting will be held in the City Council Chambers, second floor, 93 Washington Street, Salem, Massachusetts. In person shall be the primary method of public access to such meeting. A secondary method of public access may be provided if technologically feasible through Salem Access Television and/or remotely through Zoom, and the Zoom access information is located below. In attendance today from the committee, we have Councilors King, Flynn, Varela and Jason Sidoriak joining remotely, and myself, Committee Chair Tarosky. From the Council of the Whole, we have Councilor Hapworth, Councilor Halapa, Council President Merkel, and Councilor Davis. We also have members of the Board of Registrars and Greg Dennis from Voter Choice Massachusetts, Beth Renard, City Solicitor, and James Wheelock, Assistant City Solicitor, in attendance. I'm going to begin by giving the floor to Councilor Varela so he can update us on the history of what was done regarding ranked choice voting in City Council last year.
Thanks for putting me on the spot. No, thank you, Chair Tarowski. Thank you everyone for being here. I feel like we've had many discussions about ranked choice voting. And I think we found a pathway, respectfully, to start discussing language as far as a home rule petition, which is obviously the first process in having any movement on ranked choice voting. So I introduced this in June, and the reason I believe that we should be looking into ranked choice voting is there's always a better way to do something, especially voting. And when it comes to ranked choice voting, it really comes down to representation. And the reason I like ranked choice voting, and I think it would work for Salem, is not only would it potentially attract different candidates in our city for elections, but also what I truly appreciate about ranked choice voting is it's about math, and it's also about everyone's vote still counts. If your first choice, if you didn't get your first choice, there's a potential that you'd get your second choice. And going forward, when it comes to even local elections, I believe that if you don't get 51% of the vote, that's not representative of the constituency here in Salem. So again, this is the reason I really want to see the opportunity, and it shouldn't be up to the electeds to decide how we vote. So just so we're clear about this, what we're doing here today, we're creating an order for our legal department to draft a home rule petition for said home rule petition for ranked choice voting. At that point, whatever happens tonight, whether this be voted out favorably or negatively, it'll be up to the council to start to dissect the language when it comes to ranked choice voting, so we can actually put forward a home rule petition to the legislature. At that point, I'm not sure when we'll see a home rule petition back from the legislature. I'm assuming it'll be a little bit of time. At that point, what we're looking to do is, it would be a non-binding referendum. Once let's say it comes back favorably from the legislature, that they approve us for ranked choice voting. At this point, it comes back to City Council. We decide the actual process and language as reflected on the home rule petition. And at that point, it goes to a ballot question to the voters of Salem. Again, we're the elected. We shouldn't be deciding how we vote, but I don't think we should be in the way of the process of how this happens. I really believe that it's acceptable and it's appropriate that we hand this to the voters to decide, and I hope that the stakeholders of ranked choice voting who want this to happen, including me, start to advocate for it. And at that point, once the ballot question maybe goes favorably, at that point, we start to implement ranked choice voting. So that's the history with this. Again, as counselors, we shouldn't be a barrier to new ideas here. we should be open to them. So that's why we're here. So thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Varela. That was important background information. At this time, I'm going to cede the floor to Greg Dennis from Voter Choice Massachusetts to give us an overview of ranked choice voting in general and hopefully answer some questions. And we'll take questions after the presentation is done.
Thank you. I'm Greg Dennis, Policy Director from Voter Choice Massachusetts. And I'm just going to share my presentation here on Zoom. Okay, great. Thank you to Chair Tarosky, members of the Government Service Committee and Committee of the Whole that are in attendance. So let's just get into it. I start off here, if you want to try out ranked choice voting, you could plug this short URL into your phone, vcma.us/Salem, or scan this QR code. We have a little fun, maybe it's fun, mock election of ranking your favorite candy. I debated whether to include this, but I thought, hey, if people want to try it out, go ahead and I can show the results later. I'll give you I can repeat that, vcma.us/Salem, or anybody at home watching. So what is ranked choice voting? Well, the problem we're trying to fix, the primary problem we're trying to fix with ranked choice voting is the problem of vote splitting. So say we're holding an election for favorite candy and two candidates enter the race, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups and candy corn. Early polling shows about 60% prefer Reese's to candy corn, so it looks like the peanut butter cups will win handily. That is until, a third candidate decides to enter the race, Reese's Minis. That's bad news for Reese's fans. Now their votes are split, and on election day, candy corn wins with less than a majority, less than 50% of the vote. Now, this doesn't just happen in toy elections. One prominent example from recent history is the mayoral race in Fall River in 2019. In the year prior, the mayor, Giselle Correa, mayor of Fall River, was arrested for wire fraud and false tax returns. And as a result, there was an effort to recall him, a vote to see whether or not he would be removed from office. And that recall was successful at 61% of the vote, 61% of voters voting to recall him. However, that recall election was followed on the same ballot with an election to fill the vacant seat, and Correa didn't want to give up his seat and asked voters to vote for him for re-election to the seat he had just been recalled from. And the results were as follows. He won the election to fill his vacancy with only 35% of the vote. And as anyone who looked at these numbers commented at the time, he only won re-election because his challengers, quote unquote, split the vote with one another. And in most elections in the US today, there's no requirement that candidates win with a majority of the vote. More than 50%. In Massachusetts, we very often see candidates winning with percentages in the 30s or 20s. We sometimes call this the spoiler effect, the idea being that Kamara, Riley, and Scott Pacheco here arguably spoiled the chances of Coogan winning the race. And this problem of vote splitting has a number of negative consequences. I mean, first, as we saw in the example, it means we may elect someone without majority support. It means voters sometimes feel pressured to vote for the, quote, lesser of two evils. They settle for one of the candidates they feel is electable rather than the candidate they really want. This threat of vote splitting causes prospective candidates to bow out of the race before it's even begun. Fewer candidates means a less diverse candidate pool. It means fewer campaigns, driving voter turnout, and in some it means campaigns are less welcoming, inclusive, and engaging than they could be. And that's some of the things we're trying to fix with ranked choice voting. So how does it work? Well, these are the types of ballots you may see you do see in Salem today. Depending upon the particular office, you may be asked to vote for up to 1, or up to 3 for school committee, or up to 4 for city council at large. In ranked choice voting, we would simplify this. You'd see only one ballot, regardless of the race. When filling out the ballot, in this ballot, voters are asked to rank their candidates in order of preference, first, second, third, fourth, and so on. And voters can choose just one candidate in the first column, or if they want, mark a second choice in the second column, a third choice in the third column, as many or as few choices as they like, And it doesn't matter how many seats we're filling, 1, 3, 4, the instructions and the ballot stay the same. To see how the votes are counted, we can look at a race between the 4 candidates on this ballot, Nathaniel, Elizabeth, Timothy, and Charlotte. The count works by starting just by counting the choices in the first column here, just the first choices. And say there are 100 ballots, and of these 100, from these 100, Nathaniel has 36 first choices, Elizabeth 24, Timothy 12, and Charlotte 28. Nathaniel's in the lead, but with ranked choice, you can't win with only 36% of the vote. So instead, the count drops the last place candidate, that's Timothy, and everyone that voted for Timothy has their vote instantly count towards their next choice instead. And we continue to drop the last place candidate and transfer those ballots until 2 candidates remain, and when only 2 are left, one of those candidates is necessarily going to have a majority, more than 50%, and will win the seat. So congratulations here to Nathaniel. What about multi-seat elections? Well, the first thing to observe in multi-seat elections is that if we keep this majority threshold, somebody has to win more than 50%, we're only going to be able to elect one person, because only one person can get more than 50%. So what we do for a multi-seat election is we lower the threshold to allow more candidates to be elected. It goes to 25% for a three-seat election, like for school committee, and 20% for a 4-seat election, like for at-large city council. Well, in addition, we expect that some candidates are going to receive more votes than that threshold. What do we do in that case? We don't want those extra votes to stay with that candidate and be wasted. So the additional thing we add in multi-seat, in addition to lowering the threshold, is any surplus votes the candidate received is distributed to the next choices on the ballots counting for those candidates, and distributed in a proportional way. One additional note about multi-seat is that bullet voting doesn't give you any advantage. So, and I know probably in some Salem elections today, some voters might be inclined to bullet vote because it can, depending upon the circumstance, give you an advantage. There's no strategic advantage to doing that in ranked choice voting. It's still perfectly valid. It's a perfectly valid legal ballot to submit with only one choice or only 2 choices, but there's no strategic advantage to doing so for that candidate. It's important to remember, regardless of whether we're talking about single seat or multi-seat, that the task we're asking the voter to do remains the same. It's to fill out this ranked ballot, which is indicating your first, second, and third choice, regardless of how many seats we're filling. And we know from experience around the country, around the world, that voters are able to do this correctly and effectively. One additional thing in our proposal here is that we're eliminating preliminary elections. That's what the home rule petition, the draft, does. Why? Well, we don't need them anymore. Ranked choice voting narrows the field automatically in a single election, so we don't need the preliminary election to narrow the field in that way. And that's a good thing, because preliminary elections, they have some advantages, but they do exclude voices and choices for voters. They exclude voters, just to pick one from the November election in Ward 1, not to pick on the chair's ward, because this is true throughout the city and throughout the state, but the turnout was 39% lower in the preliminary election for Ward 1 than it was in the general election. And even if we look at a more competitive race or a more prominent race like the special election for mayor in 2023, the turnout was 22% lower in the preliminary compared to the general for that special mayoral election. And it excludes candidates. There's fewer options on the ballot in November, and so fewer reasons for voters to turn out. And preliminary elections also cost money. I think the most recent one I heard cost $30,000. It could be corrected on that. I had a number that the 2021 one cost $45K, and I think that's only in additional poll worker costs, seasonal worker costs. The cost for elections comes out of a lot of different budgets. There's additional police detail, sometimes there's janitorial staff for schools you have to pay for, maybe DPW's putting out signs, sometimes hard to track all the costs that go into an election. We're sometimes asked about implementation concerns. Salem's new voting machines, which I believe were new as of September 2024, are fully compatible with ranked choice voting. Your new ImageCast precinct machines support ranked choice voting and are used in ranked choice voting elections around the country. You do need the software package. Salem has not yet purchased the software package that goes with the machines. That, you have to get a specific quote from the vendor, but I think would run about $12K for the first year and about a tenth of that for the annual licensing costs each year after that. But there would be a net cost savings with the elimination of preliminary elections. And from a lot of clerks' offices we've talked to, the software is very much appreciated, particularly for non-municipal elections, for the higher turnout state and federal elections, which are more effort for clerks' offices. The software takes care of a lot of the manual tasks. This isn't like ranked choice voting specific software. It's election software that goes with the machines, and it happens to also do ranked choice voting. I'd like to point out that ranking is something we do every day. You know, people get concerned. Is this something voters are going to be able to handle? Here in Salem, you know, parents are given a ranked ballot to choose their choice of school, and I don't think there's a whole lot of hand-wringing around that. So it's something that's just prominent in our lives. We don't even think about the fact that we're filling out ranked ballots or ranking things. Where is it used? In Massachusetts, 2 cities use it today. There's been 10 more home rule petitions to use it and dozens of activist efforts to add new home rule petitions around the state. Many states around the country use it in various forms. And of course, other countries use it, including in Australia and Ireland, for over a century. To summarize the proposal for Salem that's in the home rule petition, ranked choice voting for mayor and ward councilor for those single seats would take place when there's at least 3 candidates in the race. If there's only 1 or 2, you don't need to rank those options. You can just choose your one like you do today. And candidates need more than 50% to win. For multi-seat elections, you'd use ranked choice voting when there's more candidates than there are seats. And it would be a 25% threshold for the 3-seat race and 20% threshold for the 4-seat race, and there would be no more preliminary elections. The benefits, to summarize, it ensures winners in those single-seat elections have majority support. It encourages a larger, more diverse candidate pool, saves money by eliminating preliminary elections, limits gamesmanship and the need to bullet vote. And one thing we didn't really talk about, or I didn't really talk about, was the way it fosters more civil and positive campaigning. Because when you have an incentive to reach out to supporters of your opponents to earn their second or third choices, it changes how you engage with the public. And that's it. Happy to answer any questions. I don't know if anybody got a chance to vote in that mock election, but I could bring that back up if people wanted to vote. We only had a couple votes come in, so I won't show the results, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dennis. That was a very informative presentation. At this time, I will open the floor to councilors for questions. And if Mr. Dennis needs to answer anything, he's welcome to do so. After that, we'll open up the floor to others who may have comments or questions. Any under discussion? Councillor Flynn.
Thank you. I had a question for you regarding that. How you were saying the bullet vote wouldn't it still be as effective? Because, you know, you can rank up to, say, for the at-large race in Salem, you can vote for up to 4. And if a person chooses to just vote for 1, isn't that pretty much the same thing? Because now you're not giving a ranking to other candidates,
no,
bump up?
Thank you for the question. The difference is that your vote in ranked choice voting isn't going to count to for your second choice. None of your vote will count to your second choice until the fate of your first choice is known. Until that first choice is elected or defeated, your vote won't count to your second choice. The issue in the Salem elections today is your vote for your second choice can defeat your first choice. So that's why your vote for your third choice could defeat your first choice. So that's why people have an incentive to bullet vote under ranked choice. Your vote will never count beyond your first choice until your first choice is already out of the running or already is guaranteed a seat.
Okay, thank you for that. One last question. In the at-large race, say in Salem, what if a person likes 2 candidates, the same? Like, how does a person choose between 1 and 2? You know what I mean? Say, out of the 5 candidates, I like 2 or 3 of them equally. So what would be a good thing for a person to understand, saying, you know, I don't want to give more to one person, you know what I mean, putting them number one, and when my number two, I like them just as much as my number one.
Yeah.
You know how that could confuse a little
Sure.
bit? Question.
What I would say to that person is, if they like two equally, I would say if there's only one seat available, who would you vote for? And whoever they choose for that, that's the one they should rank first.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Any further questions? Councillor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair Tarowski, not being a member of the committee. Just a couple of comments. I appreciate the presentation today. I appreciate this being in committee. And I also appreciated the comment earlier from the Ward 7 councillor. We shouldn't be a barrier to new ideas. And I do appreciate that the residents would decide this. And I also, what resonates to me are some of the points that the current system can discourage candidates from running, and because they don't want to be spoilers, and that results in fewer options for the voters on the ballot, and fewer options just aren't good for democracy. And quickly, I'll speak to the elimination of the preliminaries. They do cause confusion, and I just know from my own experience and other candidates, I had the experience of winning a preliminary and losing the general. And for months, I heard from residents, they reached out to me as their city councilor, and I had to explain to them that that was a preliminary and I lost, and I'm not their city councilor. Or I know the candidates that continued door knocking after after a preliminary, and they were asked, why are you still door knocking? He won. So I just wanted to make those comments that I do appreciate. And I appreciate the process that was explained here, that this is a home rule petition and then it would go back to the voters. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Merkel. Any other questions? Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair Tarowski. Not a question for me, but just want to express my gratitude to Councillor Varela for the hard work and time that's been spent on this. Really excited to have this here, and for the fantastic presentation. I'm really excited about ranked choice voting for all the reasons that have been said, but really mostly just to see people's opinions and voices be able to be expressed in a more kind of expansive and comprehensive way. I think the saving of cost and time and resources for the city and for our city clerk and hopefully at some point electoral commission is really significant. So excited about that, and this is a policy that I've long thought should be instituted at the state and federal level. So glad to see us trying to really be a leader on this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Hapworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess this is through you to either James or to the Ward 7 councillor. You may have covered this already, but I guess just to clarify the process here, this petition will go to the legislature, then potentially come back to us if approved. At that point, do we have the opportunity to update the language in here, or is there any sort of finalization with this?
Councillor Varela.
Thank you, Chair Tarowski. So yes, thank you for the question, Councillor Hapworth. So concerning what's happening here tonight, so what the intent of tonight is to choose. So we have to be very careful on what we decide tonight as far as drafted language. This language will go to our solicitor's office. At that point, they will draft a home rule petition for us, whatever comes out tonight. Then it'll go back to the general council. Then we'll be able to dissect it and pull it apart, whether in committee or the actual floor of the council. So this is the start of the conversation, but for us right now, this is allowing our city solicitor to review the document and to bring it forward.
Councillor Hapworth.
Thank you, Chair. So to clarify, if the committee chooses, the motion that would come out of this committee would be to authorize the city clerk to draft a home rule petition. I'm sorry, the city solicitor is. City solicitor to draft the home rule petition, and then that comes back, I assume, in the committee report, and then it's reported back out to the council, and then we go from there. Got it.
That's correct, Councilor Hepworth. Any further discussion? Councilor Varela.
Thank you, Chair Tarowski. So again, tonight is really about deciding on tabulation if we want to include multi-seat into ranked choice voting, which I believe we should. So tonight's meeting, we have to decide the language to give guidance to our legal department. So that's the intent of tonight. As we see this draft here, I don't see anything that would be, this is, I wouldn't say vanilla, but this is how most of ranked choice voting happens in other cities and towns in Salem, in the Commonwealth, as well as around the country. But I'd be happy to hear from our board of registrars on what they're thinking about this as well. That includes the ex officio, the clerk as well.
Yes, if our Board of Registrars would like to join in, I'd like to invite them to do so. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts with all of you. I am Dr. Alexandra Pinheiro-Shields, 7 Bristol Street, and I currently serve as the chair of the Board of Registrars for elections. First, I wanted to start off by congratulating all of you for taking the time to discuss this. I think it's a courageous act to discuss this issue. It's exceptionally urgent, I think, in my mind. And I feel impelled to speak to you tonight because I have committed my life and career to advancing democracy. You see, I was born in Spain and lived under the dictatorship of Francisco Franco. In addition, as a young woman, I taught English to physicians and scientists in the Soviet Union. Therefore, I have personal experience of what life is like without democracy. I support ranked choice voting because it is a way of making our democracy more real and vibrant. Ranked choice voting promotes democracy in at least 3 ways. First, by allowing voters to vote for multiple candidates and rank those candidates by highest to lowest preference, ranked choice voting offers more choice to voters. Having more choices is central to how many people think about freedom. I'll say that again. Having more choices is central to what people think about freedom. In these difficult political times, when people are feeling that their civil rights, their due process, and privacy are under attack, preserving democracy is paramount, and having choice, again, choice, is a central component to maintaining democracy. Second, by offering more choice, ranked choice voting promotes higher voter engagement and turnout. States like Maine and Alaska have been using ranked choice voting for their federal elections and have seen a rise in voter turnout. In places that use ranked choice voting format, voters feel that they have more influence on the outcomes of elections and thus are more willing to turn out to vote. Like many cities throughout the country, Salem can use a boost in our voter turnout, as Mr. Dennis so clearly pointed out. And third, ranked choice voting de-incentivizes polarization. In the current moment, the political polarization that is paralyzing Congress and much of our politics is dangerous. It's really dangerous to our country's political health and public safety. Research has shown that ranked choice voting reduces negative campaign tactics. As a registered independent, I want people to have political and electoral independence and not be driven by the fighting in our two-party system. Ranked choice voting is a strategy to prevent polarization in Salem. Ranked choice voting has been used by over 13 million voters in 23 states and Washington, D.C. It is used in, as Mr. Dennis also pointed out, it is used in Ireland, Scotland, Australia, New Zealand, and numerous European countries use various forms of proportional representation similar to ranked choice voting in principle, such as Britain, Germany, Italy, France, Spain, and Greece. The American Bar Association and other legal institutions report that ranked choice voting is being used by many municipalities because it leads to more equitable representation. It avoids spoiler effects, as Mr. Dennis has demonstrated, and it is cost effective because there is no need for runoff elections. Generations of Salem residents have fought to make Salem a city that upholds the Constitution of the United States and believes in and promotes democratic practices. I support ranked choice voting because I care deeply about preserving democracy in our beloved city, Salem.
Thank you, Dr. Pinheiro-Shields. Mr. Bates, would you like to comment?
Thank you, councilors. Don Bates. I was a city council back in the late 80s, early 90s. I sat up on a podium there for a while, so I'm kind of familiar with the place. As far as ranked choice voting, I'm undecided at this point. I'm hearing the discussions. I've heard them about a year or so ago. I'm waiting to hear some negatives, just to balance this thing. I haven't heard them, and I'm saying it's just all positive. And then I was reading some of the background I had before, notes and so forth. I've seen some cities that were mentioned, Minneapolis being one, the problems are going through today. I don't know how this ranked choice voting goes into that, but they're one of those countries. There's two other ones out in California. I wonder how they're doing out there as well. So along those lines, I'm undecided with this. I really want to hear more and more, and I would love to see some of the negatives come out of this. I do have one question as far as the cost of this ranked choice voting, because we talked about it quite often. Was it? Yeah, is Dennis? Yeah. Dennis, the cost of the ranked choice voting as far as implementing this, does it compare to the cost of the preliminary elections at all? Have you ever seen it exceeded? About what percentage would we save? Any idea?
As for the preliminary election cost, I'll defer to the clerk for the precise answer. My understanding is that preliminary elections vary a little bit between $30,000 and $50,000 when there's a preliminary election. And the software is a one-time cost of, it's going to be about $12,000 for the one-time cost, and then an annual recurring licensing fee of about a tenth of that, maybe $1,200 a year. So it's much less than the cost. There'd be a net savings from adopting this and eliminating preliminaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. That's all I have to say at the moment. Thank you for my opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. I did want to make one other comment as well. I don't think this has been said yet, but as somebody who went through a preliminary election, as did two of my fellow councilors here today, if you can remove that expense from your campaign expenses, then we are able to open up our campaigning to people who can't afford to basically host 2 rounds of elections in their campaign. So you're saving money for fundraising for the candidates as well, not to mention the time from our elected officials if they're running for re-election. If they're organizing a re-election preliminary campaign, you're taking time away from their constituent services and their other legislative duties. Councillor King.
Thank you, Chairperson Turowski. Yeah, I mostly just have some comments in general on the topic area, and thank you, Mr. Dennis, for your presentation and the Board of Registrars for their comments. I will emphasize exactly the point that you just made about, I was in the most contested primary in Salem, and there were 4 of us in the race, and it really was very common that people at the door said they wished they could rank us because we agreed on a lot of things, and we were able to have really productive conversations and talk about the things we agreed on very collaboratively. It was a very polite race, given the fact that we were running against each other. And it's one of those areas where it really actually spurred a lot of conversations with people at the doors about ranked choice voting, because people were really wishing they could rank the vote. And a lot of people were remembering that 2020 election that we had. There was a statewide ballot question where Salem voted 52% in favor of ranked choice voting. So people were remembering that and going, wait, I guess we don't have that. You're right, we don't have that. I remember voting for it, but we don't have it. So people definitely are comfortable with the concept and bringing it up themselves without even us needing to bring it up to them. So that's just one thing in general. I will also say, there's a lot of stories coming out of Alaska and Maine especially about just the civility, right? I think that's been mentioned by a couple people, but the civility in these elections is so important, right? We don't have partisan municipal elections in Salem, but obviously some of us are members of parties, right? We have some big hot button issues, and this really essentially forces candidates to talk to people they otherwise would not have talked to. You cannot win, really, in ranked choice voting without talking to people that you would not normally talk to and speak to, and really hearing them out and listening to their point of view. So that's another thing I just wanted to add. And then I will just say, at the end of the day, this does come to a vote of the people of Salem if it comes back from the legislature to us. So that, at the end of the day, it's great that some of us support it, but it also is not our decision. At the end of the day, it is the voters of Salem who vote and get to choose what style of democracy they have. So,
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Jalapa.
Thank you, Chair Tarowski. I also wanted to just thank Mr. Dennis for the presentation and actually speak to one of the negatives that I have heard sort of anecdotally about ranked choice voting is that it's confusing and complicated. And I just wanted to thank in particular that you made the presentation Salem specific. I think that was very helpful. That made it very clear. In particular with the multi-seat races, I can certainly appreciate the simplicity of having the ballot look the same sort of regardless of it's a single seat or a multi-seat. I know I have spoken to folks that are confused about what a ward and what an at-large councilor are, and that certainly makes it complicated when they do that vote and they see it differently and they're not sure why one they can vote for 4 and one they can vote for 1. So I just wanted to state my appreciation for that, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Jalapa. Councillor Varela.
Thank you, Chair Tarowski. So again, just to get into the nuts and bolts of this, I think the most contentious thing we have to discuss tonight is the tabulation of votes, specifically multi-seat. Through you to Mr. Dennis, I know right here we have a very spelled out way when it comes to the multi-seat on how we tabulate the votes. Can you discuss are there other ways to tabulate votes in a multi-seat race? I know what we're looking at right now seems very cut and dry, and I do like this, but I would like to also discuss other options if there was as well.
Sure. Thank you for the question. The method you had before you for the multi-seat offices is, I'll start by saying it's the most common method used for multi-seat ranked choice voting in the US and around the world. It's the method that's in all of the city home rule petitions in Massachusetts. So it's the method in the Boston, Amherst, Northampton, East Hampton home rule petitions. And it's the one used in Minneapolis and, Ireland and Australia and so on. There are a few less used variants that aren't as highly regarded because they don't offer the same proportionality of results. So one of the benefits of multi-seat ranked choice voting in the way you have it here is it really represents the full diversity of those people that are voting. So in a race in Salem today, you could have, if you had a very divided public, you could have a slim majority of voters, block of voters, or even a plurality of voters control 100% of the seats. And in this method, it would ensure that different voices see themselves represented in those that are elected. And the other methods tend to compromise on that a little bit. And there's some more marginal use cases where that might be arguable, but when you're talking about a legislative body, this is really the gold standard that people look to and the one that's preferred by Fair Vote and all of the major electoral reform organizations.
Excellent. And one more follow-up. So when it comes to home rule petitions that are either right now in the legislature or have been passed, this method has been used to spell out how the votes would be tabulated, correct?
All of the home rule petitions spell out the method to use, the tabulation method.
Common method that we're discussing.
Oh, all of the ones from cities do. There are a few towns that have opted for one of the other variants. The town offices are a little bit different. In a town, most of the multi-seats are 2 seats at a time, and it's hard to get proportionality out of 2 seats. And then also the town offices like select board are an executive office, not a legislative body. So there's been a few towns that have opted for a non-proportional ranked choice, which we don't think is appropriate for a legislative body, and that's why all the cities for their city councils have preferred this option.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Dennis.
Actually, thank you, Councilor Varela. We have Councilor Sidoriak in Zoom land. Bear with me while I do this for the first time, please. Councilor Sidoriak, you can unmute yourself.
Chair Tarosky, and I apologize for not being there. I have the flu at the moment, and I didn't want to get anyone sick. Excuse me. As you see, I just wanted to speak a little bit more to some of the negatives that have been brought up over the decades, and I hope Mr. Dennis could maybe provide some counterpoints, one of which has already been addressed, which is the technology piece. It seems like that was a big hurdle a couple of decades ago, but we even have the technology to do it. We just need the software. The other piece is the confusion that does occur with having many different candidates, not necessarily the process of ranked choice voting, especially for elderly folks, keeping track of many different candidates and who's going for what. And I think a lot of that onus is on the candidates themselves, but I am curious to know if you can speak to any informational campaigns that cities have done to try to inform citizens on working through this process.
Thank you, Councilor Sidoriak. Oh, sorry.
That was a question for me, I take it, right? Okay. Informational campaigns. Yeah, every city and town and jurisdiction that has adopted it has done some amount of voter education. There's lots of voter education materials out there. There's an organization called the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center, a nonprofit that's staffed with former election officials that provides free of charge information, including free of charge. They'll fly somebody out here for free, any jurisdiction that wants to adopt it, and help with staff and help sometimes run candidate trainings. So there's a lot of materials, and also, it's used in New York City and San Francisco and Alaska and Maine. I think if those people can handle it, I think Salem voters are up to the task as well.
Ms. Simmons, please.
Thank you. Good evening. This is not working. Sorry about that. I'll just hold it. Yeah, that's okay. I know we've been talking about ranked choice voting for a while, so, be very, hopefully very brief. I've been doing elections for 26 years, going on 26 years, and, we've seen a lot of changes over the years, mostly comes from the state level, whatever, sometimes they're small, sometimes they're large. Nothing has changed the elections landscape like the 2020 elections, post-COVID. So we are always up for the challenge, up to the task, no matter what happens, our office, or if there'll be an election commission. I'm sure that they will be able to handle whatever happens with the vote on this. But I do have a couple of questions for Mr. Dennis, maybe, or Dennis, sorry, Mr. Dennis, if I'll ask them first. So if this does go to the state legislation, and it gets approved, I guess my question is, well, there's no primaries or preliminaries. There's got to be, before it goes to the voters, I would think some education and engagement and discussion with the voters. Who's going to do that? These are things that I think from my staffing viewpoint, time, cost, energy for doing that, and also like in a very, non-biased way in terms of presenting the facts to the voters. Again, I don't know if there'll be election commission by that time. Hopefully there will be. So those are the questions I have. There might not be a primary, but there's going to be some education involved in that. And in the meantime, things will be still run the way that they are run. So that's just something I think of, because I know people want things, and then once they're done, it's left up to the clerk or whatever department that is to implement it. So those are the way I'm thinking, and that's just from what type of standpoint I'm thinking about. And the other question that I had is, and it might be able to answer Councilor Flynn's question a little better. When you showed your demonstration about the single-seat race I came in at the tail end of that, I think it was Reese's or Snickers or whatever it was, and you showed how, the lowest went to the highest and such, and you kind of explained a multi-seat race. I know that I have seen in the past some more detail of how that surplus works. I don't think Councilor Flynn got to kind of see that, where it's, X amount goes there, and then how that's distributed from that. Because I do remember there was an example shown where somebody did win an election by the way that we do it now, but with ranked choice vote, and that person who won with a regular election didn't win at all using ranked choice voting. And those are the things that, I think people should be aware of. And it might also help Councilor Flynn answer maybe better that question about by bulleting somebody. So if you have something like that to show, or can get something like that, those are my questions. And I just had one other question about how recounts work. We do have the capability of doing, I don't know any costs yet, but I know we have the capability of doing ranked choice voting with our, new machines we have. But I'm also interested in how recounts work.
Those were excellent questions. Thank you. So the first question was around a little bit more on the educational campaign and who's responsible for that. And I probably should have added when that question first came up that there's a number of nonprofits that are willing to pitch in. Voter Choice Massachusetts, Fair Vote, Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center. Very often the League of Women Voters, I don't want to speak for them, but very often they take the lead in these jurisdictions to help out. So it wouldn't be solely on the city to provide that education. There'd be a lot of free resources in the forms of nonprofits to pitch in with that. And maybe some of the savings from losing the preliminary election in the first years could be put towards some educational materials instead. There is a question about how the surplus is distributed and wanting to see that in a little more detail, I am happy to share an example of that if people want to walk through that. Okay. So I will do that. Here's an example. Oh yeah, I don't have to lean over so much that way. That's good. So here's an example, 100 voters. Candidate names have changed from the previous one. And we'll say this is a two-seat election, just to keep it a little bit shorter for the purposes of the example. And in a two-seat election, the threshold is 33%. You got to get more than a third. So at 100 voters, 33%, you got to get 34 votes to be elected in a two-seat election. So the threshold here is 34 votes. So Mary, this is all the first, what you see here is the first choices, just tallying the first choices on the ballot. So in the first choices only, Mary's already across the threshold with 36 votes. So she's won a seat. She's won the first of those two seats, and she has a surplus of 2 votes. Now, for the purposes of this example, let's say that half of Mary's voters ranked Diego second, and half of Mary's voters ranked Sally second. So what we do here is we note that because there's a surplus of 2, everyone that voted for Mary gets 2 over 36, that's the math, 1/18 of their vote counted towards their next choice. So an equal portion of everybody that voted for Mary gets the fraction they don't need counted towards their next choice. So that means 18 of Mary's voters get an 18th of their vote counted to Diego, and 18 of Mary's voters get an 18th of their vote counted to Sally. So of those 2 surplus votes, a total of 1 goes to Diego and the other goes to Sally. That's how the surplus works, is you take an equal fraction from everybody's ballot and distribute it to the next choice on those ballots. We still got to elect a second candidate here, and if no one's over threshold, you go back to what we saw from single-seat ranked choice voting, which is you eliminate the lowest vote getter and redistribute their votes. So Robbie wins the second seat here. That's how the surplus works. It's completely precise and tries to make sure everyone's vote is counted with as few votes as wasted as possible. You had another question around recounts. So recounts, a lot of the state procedures for recounts, which I'm sure you're familiar with, are sort of independent or orthogonal from the voting method. You have to pile the ballots in stacks of 50, and you have to have 2 observers at each of these tables and so on. That you could do that with any voting method. There are materials that the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center provides that take you step by step into how you actually do it. But a lot of the mechanics of like 2 people observing the ballot, you'd probably sort the ballots by first choices, and then you'd see, does anybody, in a single seat election, does anybody have a majority? If they do, that person wins that seat. And you'd eliminate the lowest vote getters and observe what the second choices are on the ballots. But there's quite like very detailed information from the Resource Center that takes you step by step and provides materials for that. So I hope that helps. Did I miss a question there?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Did any other counselors or committee members in attendance have questions before I open up to the public? Okay. So I'll ask if anybody in the room has any public comment. Okay. Anybody in Zoom land? Oh, yep, we have one in the room. If you're in Zoom land and you have public comment, please raise your hand and I'll call on you after we're finished with the attendees in the room.
Yeah.
Hi, Elizabeth Broad, 22 Larchmont Road. I just wanted to address the whole nonprofit educating the public. I'll put on my League of Women Voters hat on, and the League of Women Voters in Salem has put on on educational events for everyone in Salem as recently as this summer. And there's also a website, Salem RCV, that was started 4 or 5 years ago, and that's kept up to date. And I'll put on my chair the Salem Democrats hat. There's also educational material on salemdemocrats.org, and in addition to all the nonprofits that Greg Dennis listed. Thank you for all your work. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Brott. Anybody in Zoom land for public comment? Okay, seeing none. Anybody else in the room? Okay. I wanted to ask if anybody has specific questions about the proposed language in the draft, the draft order here. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Chair Tanowski. To Councilor Varela, as a city solicitor, have they run through this and had suggestions, things they want to add, things that should be taken out?
Yeah, so Beth and I have been discussing this for quite a while now. And, you know, I won't speak for Beth, but when it comes to the actual language we've been discussing, I don't see any outliers as far as any concerns. But I won't talk for Beth. And I guess if you heard the question, Beth, is there any, if you could, please.
I heard it. Can you use that so that we can get you recorded?
Sorry, I had to step out for a meeting I had scheduled in the mayor's office. Councilor Varela and I have worked on this for quite some time. This is a home rule petition that my office will hand over to Lauren Goldberg, which some of you may know. Lauren runs KP Law, which is a large law firm that represents many, many municipalities. But before that, she ran the elections division as the chief counsel for the state. So she is the go-to person when it comes to elections and charters and home rule petitions like this. We've already gotten guidance from her. So if the council votes to move forward with referring this to my department to draft and come back to the council with a home rule petition, we will engage Lauren Goldberg, Attorney Goldberg, to work with us on it. But no red flags at this point.
Thank you, Solicitor Renard. Councilor Varela?
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up and say, yeah, so when it comes to this process, I really think that what we're doing is, when it comes to procedure, is handing it over to our city solicitor to really take an even larger deep dive. And I thank you for mentioning Lauren Goldberg of KP Law. I think it takes more than just your eyes to look at this to make sure we get this right. And at that point, it'll come back to City Council and we can deliberate on it. So thank you for your time on this and leveraging KP Law to look at this as well.
Thank you, Councilor Varela. Any other comment from anyone in the room? Oh, yes?
If there's no more comments, I'd love to make a motion.
I would love to entertain a motion if there are no more comments.
Thank you, Chair Jarowski. So I would like to make a motion that this be referred to the council as a positive recommendation for the next council meeting.
I'd like to second.
Councillor King seconds. We will be doing a roll call vote on the decision. And on the matter of providing a positive recommendation on the issue of ranked choice voting via home rule petition, I'll take a roll call vote. Councillor Flynn?
Yes.
Councillor King?
Yes.
Councillor Sidoriak, I have to unmute you. Councillor Sidoriak?
Yes.
Councillor Sidoriak, can you unmute yourself, please? Yes.
Sorry, yes.
Oh, sorry, my fault. Councillor Sidoriak?
Yes.
Councillor Varela?
Yes.
And I am Councillor Chair Tarosky, and I vote yes as well. 5 in the yes and 0 in the negative. Councilor Varela?
Thank you, Chair Tarowski. Motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Thank you so much for your help.
Roll call vote on adjournment.
Oh, a roll call vote to adjourn, yes. Do I have, we'll start with Councilor Flynn.
Yes.
Councilor King.
Yes.
Councilor Sidoriak.
Yes.
Councilor Varela.
Yes.
And I am Chair Councilor Tarowski, and I am also a yes. 5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Thank you so much, Mr. Dennis, for your help with us tonight, and for everybody else who's put work into this project. We are adjourned.